Hey YouTube, I am starting work on this Hakim stock. I actually stripped this last night to kind of get the process rolling. I didn't really go too harsh on this thing. I used basically some purple power you can get anywhere, and this is the greatest stuff for getting crap and cosmoline out of rifle stocks. Make sure you get the non-bleach formula, because bleach formula will actually damage the stock. There's a million and one ways to clean a stock. The big issue comes down to if the type of how caustic the chemical is. You know, purple power, grease lightning, all those degreasers, those are pretty harsh, and it's probably about as strong as I would go in reality. Usually if a stock is bad, I will boil it in degreaser, and that actually gets a lot of the issues out a lot quicker rather than just kind of letting it sit. What I did is, you can see the difference. I stripped this forend a bit, and then left the wood as is. So I was going to do a quick demonstration video on how I do it. Now, the thing also is, especially if you're working with military rifle stocks, is that you're going to want to check for any cartouches or any stock stampings and whatnot. This is where a lot of people were sanding gets away from people, because they end up sanding a lot of that history out. You know, the Mauser rifles have the cartouche here. You have the Japanese era Sakas that have a cartouche there and there. You know, inside the forend you'll see stock numbers. You know, Garands and Inland M1 carbines and Springfields will have cartouches here, here, and here. You know, so if you're sanding a lot of that stuff away, you're actually sanding the rifle's history. Now, obviously, you know, there's sometimes when sanding is inevitable. I tend to leave my rifle stocks as natural as possible, even if it has little chips or chunks in the wood. If it's not a huge gouge, I will generally leave it, because that's part of the history and the character of the stock. But it's, you know, it's your stock, you can do whatever you want. So what I basically do with this is come in with this and just kind of liberally spray everything down. Ideally, I actually do this with the stock up and down, because of the fact that it'll actually allow a lot of the crud and the grease and whatnot to drip down. You want to also do this in the shade. I live in Las Vegas. It's hot as hell out here. So this will actually dry out quickly. So what I'll actually do is adjust the camera, put the stock in the shade, and then spray the hell out of it. And then I'll actually follow up with some scrubbing bubbles. And foaming action of the scrubbing bubbles actually will start to get a lot of that cosmoline and stuff out. The process, I just keep scrubbing until nothing comes off the stock. You'll start to see a lot of yellow oil and stuff dripping off. If the stock has a standard military oil finish, this is pretty much all you need. If the stock has some sort of a varnish on it, which a lot of owners will apply, you actually need to strip that off. I use the Strip X from Clean Strip. That's the safest for stains and whatnot, and it doesn't damage the rifle stock as much, and it's water soluble. So we'll come back. I'll start to get this thing to drip down, and you'll see how much crud's actually coming off of it. Okay, so I have been applying layers of the purple power, pepper, whatever the hell that stuff is, and the scrubbing bubbles. You can actually see the color change coming off of the stock, and that's just old grease and cosmoline and stuff that's soaked into the wood over the years, especially since these things weren't really finished in polyurethane. They were actually just dipped in boiled linseed oil or some type of oil sometimes, and finished that way and let it soak in. If you going up the stock, these are the areas you're going to have the biggest issues, is right around the pistol grip area and the wrist, because that's where the soldier's hands go. Typically where a lot of your cosmoline gets caked in there, especially like some of the Russian stuff, you're going to have to do quite a bit of boiling and scrubbing. I use an old toothbrush and basically hit it, and then I'll hit it some more with some chemical, let it sit for 5 minutes, scrub it again, and kind of go on and so forth until I get the stock as clean as possible. You are going to want to let it rest, basically wash it off thoroughly, and then let it rest for a couple of days. That sometimes will bring more cosmoline and stuff to the surface. You can leave it in a black plastic trash bag out in the sun if you live in a hot climate, or in the back of your back window of your car. You know, let it park, and then you can wrap towels around the stock and put it in a black trash bag, and that a lot of times that acts sort of like a pseudo thermal oven that will boil out a lot of the cosmoline, soaking it up with the paper towels that are wrapped around the stock. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. I like the scrubbing bubbles. It makes it smell nice. It doesn't attack the wood fibers, and you'll have less issues with your stock when you're done. And it also leaves it about as clean as you can get it. Ideally, the thing is, though, is you don't want to let this thing dry out. You want to keep hitting it, keep it wet, and scrubbing it, and get it wet and scrub it until you decide that that's enough, and then let it dry thoroughly, and then come back in a day or so and check your stock and see what areas may need to be redone. Okay, so here's the stock after the first pass. You can see a lot of the kind of crud is out. There's really nice grain to the wood. I say this is either a beech or a birch, and you can tell because of these little sort of half moon. I believe it indicates birch, but I could be wrong. It's one of the B ones. I got a lot of the crud out of the pistol grip area and the top wrist area. You know, this is a very, very nice looking rifle stock. So I'm gonna let it sit out in the sun for a couple of hours, see what bakes itself out, and then probably come back and hit it one more time, maybe even twice, depending, you know. And you can have to use your judgment on this as far as, you know, with the quality of the wood, the amount of use it's seen. You know, some of the Russian rifles have had a lot of use. They've had a lot of cosmoline and grease and crud, you know, impregnated into the wood. So you may have to do this several times to get the wood perfectly clean before you refinish it. But usually sitting it out, letting it rest for about 24 to 48 hours is probably a good idea, just to kind of see what comes out, because a lot of stuff will work its way back to the surface. But I like the color of this. I'm going to try to replicate it, maybe a little bit darker, and then I'm going to put a polyurethane on top of it, a satin that doesn't give it any shine. I don't like shiny rifle stocks. I like them to look as natural as possible, but with you know, modern protective coatings on it. So we'll come back and see how it looks in about 24 hours or so.